Pack your things. You're done here. The words hit the boardroom like a thunderclap. For a second, nobody moved. The long, polished mahogany table reflected the stunned faces of men and women who thought they'd seen every kind of power play, every hostile takeover, every corporate betrayal. But this? A janitor, firing their CEO? It felt like the universe had cracked open. Kareem Al-Rahman blinked, his dark eyes narrowing. His entire life had been a symphony of control. Board votes, stock acquisitions, political handshakes, and fear. He wasn't used to hearing the word no, much less being told to get out. He leaned forward, his Rolex catching the light, his voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Excuse me?" His tone was venom, dripping with disbelief. "Who the hell do you think you're talking to?" The woman standing across from him didn't flinch. Evelyn. For 15 years, she had been a ghost in this building, cleaning trash bins in the dead of night, wiping fingerprints off the lobby glass, vacuuming crumbs from under the same executives who now stared at her like she'd lost her mind. She still wore the faded blue uniform, the company-issued badge with her photo half rubbed away. But her eyes carried the calm of someone who had been waiting for this exact moment. "I said," Evelyn repeated slowly, her voice low but razor sharp, "You're fired." A nervous laugh broke out from one of the junior managers at the far end of the table. It died instantly under her stare. Around the room, pens clattered to the floor. Chairs creaked as people shifted uncomfortably. Kareem smirked. That arrogant curl of the lip that had ruined careers and silenced dissent for over a decade. "This is pathetic." "Security," he barked. "Get this woman out before I—" "No." The word came so fast, so sharp that the room froze. Evelyn's voice wasn't loud, but it carried a weight that pressed against the walls, squeezing the air out of everyone's lungs. She stepped closer to the table, her shoes squeaking softly on the polished floor. The mop she had leaned against the wall earlier looked like a forgotten prop in a play, because right now, there was no janitor in this room. There was something else. "You don't give the orders anymore," she said, her gaze locked on Kareem. "Not today." Gasps erupted. The HR director's jaw dropped. The CFO rubbed his temples like he was trying to wake from a nightmare. Kareem's face went red, fury radiating off him like heat. "Do you have any idea who I am?" he hissed. "I built this company from the ground up. I own everything you see." Evelyn cut him off with a smile. Small, controlled, deadly, not everything. For the first time in years, Kareem's words stuck in his throat. Something about the way she said it, the quiet certainty, sent a ripple of unease through his body. He glanced at the faces around the table, but nobody dared meet his eye. He straightened his jacket, trying to re-anchor himself in arrogance. "You think you can humiliate me in front of my board? You're nothing. A janitor. A piece of dust under my shoe." The word janitor hung heavy in the air. Evelyn tilted her head. "If I'm nothing," she asked softly, "why are your hands shaking?" Kareem looked down. Damn it, they were. His fingers trembled against the glass of water in front of him. He clenched his fists, furious at himself, furious at her, furious that for the first time in his life, a woman in a janitor's uniform had him cornered. She stepped forward again. Not rushed, not dramatic, just steady. And the steadiness was what terrified them all. "You've abused your power for 15 years, Evelyn said, her voice like a cold wind sweeping through the room. "You've humiliated employees, stolen credit, lined your pockets while family starved. You thought no one was watching, but someone always was." Her eyes didn't leave his. The silence after that was suffocating. Even the air conditioning hum seemed to fade. The board members glanced at one another, trying to decode what was happening. The janitor knew? How? This woman had spent years emptying trash cans and sweeping corridors, but the way she spoke, the certainty in her voice, was nothing like the invisible figure they'd ignored all this time. Kareem forced a laugh, though it cracked at the edges. "This is madness. Do you people hear this? She's delusional. She cleans our toilets and now thinks she's chairing the board." But Evelyn didn't laugh. She didn't blink. "Look around you," she said, motioning toward the glass walls of the skyscraper boardroom. "Every man and woman in this company has walked past me like I didn't exist. 15 years. I know your secrets. I know your lies. And today," her lips curled into the faintest smile, "I cash in." One of the executives, the oldest board member, a man who had been with the company since its founding, leaned forward. His eyes narrowed on Evelyn like he was trying to remember a face from long ago. Something flickered in his expression. Recognition. Fear. He didn't speak, but the way his hand shook as it reached for his coffee gave him away. Kareem saw it too. His patience snapped. He slammed both palms on the table, standing so abruptly his chair toppled behind him. "I don't care what circus this is," he roared. "I run this empire. This building, this board, this entire company answers to me." "No!" Evelyn's voice was quiet, almost gentle, but it cut deeper than his rage. "Not anymore." And then she dropped the first bomb. The thick folder she carried in under her arm hit the table with a heavy thud. The sound made everyone flinch. She slid it forward, pages spilling out, documents, signatures, contracts, legal proof. "I don't work for you," Evelyn said. Her eyes gleamed with the satisfaction of a storm finally breaking. "You've been working for me." The CFO gasped audibly. The HR director pushed back his chair. Kareem's face drained of color. "What the hell are you talking about?" he demanded. Evelyn leaned in, checked the incorporation documents. "The silent partner you've been reporting to all these years? The one you never met? The one who bailed you out when your empire almost collapsed 15 years ago." She tapped her chest once, firmly. "You're looking at her." The room spun. It felt unreal, like a plot twist too wild even for television. The janitor owned the company? The board stared at her, some horrified, some in awe, all paralyzed. Kareem shook his head violently, refusing the reality clawing at him. "Lies. All of it. You forged this. You think anyone will believe a janitor over me?" But his voice had lost its edge. Beneath the bravado, cracks were showing. His empire was built on intimidation, on the illusion of untouchable power. An illusion shattered quickly under truth. Evelyn gathered the papers back into the folder and tucked it under her arm again. She didn't need to convince the board. Not today. She only needed to look Kareem dead in the eye and say the words that would echo in his head long after this day was over. "You're fired." The sentence landed heavier the second time. Final. Absolute. For a man who had destroyed countless careers with those very words. Hearing them from her lips was unbearable. His throat tightened, rage boiling, humiliation burning through his chest. "You'll regret this," he spat, pointing at her with a trembling hand. "You'll beg me to come back when this company collapses without me." Evelyn simply turned toward the stunned board members. "Meeting's over." And then she walked out. The doors closed behind her with a hiss, leaving the Arab billionaire trembling in a room full of silence, his empire crumbling not with lawsuits or scandals, but with the calm, measured voice of the janitor he never saw coming. But what the board didn't know, what no one in that room yet realized, was that this was only the beginning. Evelyn had more than documents. She had a story, a past tangled with betrayal, survival, and revenge that stretched back 15 years. And by the time it all came out, Kareem Al-Rahman would wish he had been fired quietly. If you're hooked and want to see how a janitor could secretly own an empire, smash that like button and subscribe and stay with us. Because what happens next will shock you even more. Evelyn's story is only just beginning. The boardroom doors slammed behind Evelyn, but inside, the tension lingered like smoke after a fire. Kareem stood frozen, his pride shattered, his empire shaken. Outside, though, Evelyn's footsteps were steady, deliberate. For 15 years, she had pushed carts filled with bleach and buckets. Today, she walked the corridor like it was a runway. No one understood how a janitor could fire a billionaire. No one knew the years of silence, the secret she carried like a burning coal in her chest. And to understand that moment, we need to go back. 15 years earlier, Evelyn wasn't pushing mops. She wasn't wearing a faded uniform or bowing her head when executives brushed past. Back then, she was a single mother in Detroit, juggling 2 jobs, trying to hold her world together after her husband died in an accident. Life had cornered her, but she had one thing Kareem didn't: the ability to endure. That year, Al-Rahman Industries was drowning. The company Kareem bragged about building from the ground up was days from bankruptcy. He'd gambled with investors' money, cut corners, and nearly lost everything. But then, a silent hand pulled him back from the edge. Evelyn's hand. She had inherited a small fortune when her husband died. Not millions, but enough. While others saw her as just another grieving widow, Evelyn saw opportunity. She studied. She asked questions. And when Kareem's company was desperate for cash, she struck. She became the silent partner. The deal was simple. She provided the money. He kept her identity hidden, and in return, she got ownership rights, buried deep in the paperwork. Kareem thought she was just another faceless investor. disposable, forgettable. He never imagined the woman mopping his floors at night was the very person keeping his empire alive. Why did she choose to stay silent? Revenge takes patience. Evelyn understood that power isn't just about taking control. It's about choosing the perfect moment to reveal it. For years, she watched. She watched Kareem strut to the building like a king, humiliating employees, cutting paychecks while buying himself new cars, bragging at board dinners while janitors worked double shifts. She heard the whispers of women he harassed, the sobs of men he fired without warning, every insult, every cruel laugh, every stain of arrogance. Evelyn saw it all, and every night, she wrote it down in her little leather notebook, the one she carried tucked inside her janitor cart. To him, she was invisible. To her, he was an open book. The more Kareem grew, the more reckless he became. He thought no one could touch him. Politicians smiled at him. Bankers shook his hand. Even the board bent to his will. But Evelyn knew the truth. He was standing on ground she owned. And then came the day she chose to end it. It wasn't random. She had planned this moment for years, waiting until the empire was at its peak, so the fall would be catastrophic. The contracts were airtight. The ownership papers couldn't be denied. She had the power, and she had the timing. That morning, when she walked into the boardroom in her janitor's uniform, people thought she was cleaning. But Evelyn wasn't there to mop floors. She was there to wipe out a tyrant. And she did. Inside the boardroom, after she left, panic erupted. The CFO scrambled through old files, and his face drained of color as the documents matched hers. The HR director whispered, "Oh my God, she's telling the truth." One by one, the realization spread like a virus. The woman they'd ignored, the janitor they dismissed, was the true owner of their empire. Kareem refused to accept it. He shouted, threatened, waved his fist. But for the first time, his words bounced off walls that no longer belonged to him. Power had shifted. Permanently. Days turned into weeks, and the story exploded. The media loved it. Janitor revealed as secret billionaire. Headlines screamed about the empire turned upside down. Workers in the building cheered when they heard Kareem was out. Former employees, the ones he crushed, came forward with their stories. Evelyn listened to every single one. She reinstated jobs. She raised salaries. She shook hands with the same people who once passed her without a glance. And Kareem, the man who once called himself untouchable, was seen leaving the building under a rain of camera flashes. His face twisted in rage, his legacy reduced to scandal. He tried lawsuits. He tried smear campaigns. None of it worked. Evelyn's contracts were bulletproof. Her silence had been her weapon, and her patience had been her shield. One night, weeks after his firing, Kareem showed up at her office. No bodyguards. No board. Just him. The man who thought he was God, now stripped down to desperation. "You ruined me," he hissed, his voice low, broken. Evelyn looked at him, calm as ever. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't gloat. "No," she said softly. "You ruined yourself. I just turned the lights on." That was the last time they ever spoke. In the years that followed, Evelyn transformed the company. She invested in her workers. She built schools in the neighborhoods Kareem had ignored. She became a legend. Not because she was rich, but because she had turned humiliation into victory. The janitor they never saw became the owner they would never forget. And Kareem? He vanished. Some said he moved to Dubai, trying to rebuild his life. Others whispered he lost everything in gambling, drinking his days away in cheap hotels. But one thing was certain. He would never escape the shadow of that day. The day a janitor ended his empire. Evelyn stood in her office one morning, looking out at the city skyline. 15 years of silence had led to this view, a horizon she owned. Her uniform still hung in the back of her closet, a reminder of where she came from. And as she sipped her coffee, she whispered to herself the words that had set her free. "You're fired." And that's how Evelyn, the janitor no one noticed, became the woman who owned it all and ended the reign of an Arab billionaire villain. She didn't just fire him. She rewrote the rules of power. But let me ask you this. If you were in Evelyn's position, would you have stayed silent for 15 years or expose him sooner? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Smash that like button, and don't forget, subscribe to Residential Stories for more shocking true tales you won't believe.